Yeah, welcome everyone to this webinar on fruit fly, sort of information session. I'm Brett from Fruitshare Adelaide. We basically find fruit that's going to waste in backyards and make use of it, sharing it with community. We've, saved over 3 tonnes of fruit from going to waste so far, a lot from the McGarry's orchard in the background there. They've been really generous. So today we've got Jason Size from PIRSA, who's going to give us a bit of a rundown on the fruit fly situation and what to look out for, mainly focused on Adelaide. So yeah, over to you, Jason.
No worries. Thank you very much, Brett. Just as a bit of background, I'm primarily based in the Riverland. I've been involved in industry because I have been a grower myself, and I still have a bit of an orchard as well. So I've been heavily involved in the industry in the Riverland for over 12 years now. So newly inducted as the Incident Controller for the Riverland and also Metro Outbreak. So I'm here to help answer questions. And look, I know the initial topic originally was going to be about pests and diseases. I do have a quite substantial horticulture background as well. So if there's any questions like that coming through, I'm sure I'll give it a go. Look, I'm here tonight just to talk about the Salisbury outbreak. So most people might be aware that we had an outbreak declared on the 5th of March this year. And that was as a result of multiple detections. And there's quite a few indicators or procedures go hand in hand when we have to declare an outbreak, and it's usually when we see multiple detections over a certain period of time within a certain area that we have to declare an outbreak. And in this situation in March, it was in Salisbury North. So it is always unfortunate when we get an outbreak, but rest assured, PIRSA have plans and are always ready to go to try to control the outbreak from spreading any further as well. The way that it's been going over the last few weeks, so normally when an outbreak's declared, we set up zones. So we have a 200-metre zone around what we call the IP site, the infection point, which will go out to a 1.5 kilometre diameter, as well as then up to 15 kilometres as well. And you might be familiar, if you remember the previous metro outbreaks, we have red, yellow and green sort of zoning as well. So it's critical to understand those zonings depending on where you come from to know how to move fruit, and especially if you're sharing fruit. It's always, for us, it's best practice not to share fruit within zones if you can help it, and look at other options that what you can do with your fruit as well, such as preserving, dehydrating, all those sort of things. For myself, because I'm within outbreak zones in the Riverland, and I've got 1.5 acres of stone fruit, citrus, and figs and apples. So I've got quite a variety in my orchard. We have a process, we dry, jam, and we also dehydrate at the same time as well. So how do we identify whether we've got fruit fly in our orchard? So the main thing is to collect the fruit that might be on the ground and just check it. It's really hard to see signs of fruit fly activity. The holes they may make are really, really tiny. What we tend to find is you'll go to pick a piece of fruit up off the ground and it's completely degraded. It'll fall apart because usually the maggots will actually feed on the protein, the bacteria within that fruit to grow, develop into larvae, so then it can actually come out and fall on the ground. And that's how the fruit fly cycle actually continues. So the fruit fly female will lay eggs into the fruit, which is predominantly on the tree. As the fruit degrades on the tree, it will drop to the ground, and usually the larvae is to a stage where it will go out into the ground and pupate, and that will stay there for a certain period of time until it actually emerges as an adult fly again. Depending on that time will depend on the time of the year. So sometimes you might say we might see detections, or we might have outbreak extensions where it seems to go for a really long period of time. That's usually because it occurs in winter, where the life cycle is usually much longer, and we've got to be really careful that we capture the entire life cycle plus a little bit more to make sure we've clearly eradicated that. So one of the things I really encourage people to do is actually, if you've got fruit on the ground, collect it straight away. If you've got trees, whether it's in your orchard or your backyard, as a resident, you maintain that tree so it's at a certain height so you can actually eat the fruit that's on that tree and use up all that product as well. And of course, because we're trying to restrict movement, we try to process that fruit in some shape or form. How we can protect fruit flies going forward. Look, again, if you're in the yellow zone, you can move fruit around the yellow zone, but it's not recommended. If you've got fruit that's dropping on the ground, try to put it into your green waste bin if you have one. We don't like to compost fruit because, as I explained in the life cycle, the chances of larvae coming out into that compost and generating as a fly is really, really high. So try to remember not to compost. Try to not share your fruit and look at other options as well. We can move fruit if you're in a yellow zone into the red zone, that's fine, but you really don't want to and really can't be moving fruit from either the red zone, the yellow zone into what we call the green zone, which is outside our 15 kilometre sort of suspension area. We just want to minimise the risk as much as possible. There's always concerns about the impact of our teams going onto properties. We try to make arrangements as well to make sure people are comfortable with what we're doing, but we need to get access because we need to keep this under control. And even though you might physically not see fruit fly activity, we just want to make sure that come the date that it's going, hopefully our outbreak's going to be reinstated or the area is going to be reinstated as fruit fly free. We just want to really make sure. Currently, that sort of leads on to when we're going to get out of outbreak. At this stage, because we haven't really seen any detection since the 8th of May, that was the last detection we've had, we are hoping that from the 7th of December, the outbreak will be lifted. And that depends on multiple factors that we don't really want to see detections up until that 7th of December deadline. Our risky period is spring when the temperature gets warm and the flies start becoming active. We're not going to really see much theoretically in this sort of seasonal window being winter because things are quite dormant. Fruit fly need warmth to be able to move around, to fly, but once it gets warmer, that's a critical time for us. So you'll see us out there again going forward as well to make sure we are really clean before we declare the outbreaks over. So that's a lot of the main questions or the main points I really wanted to get across. There's definitely other things that you may want to be aware of as well, but I will just pause here at the moment just to see if there's any questions that there might be for me to answer.
Yeah, so I suppose you answered the big one for me is like how long. I suppose it's 7th December is all things going well, but if something turns up, in spring or as it warms up, then they'll push it out further.
Oh, absolutely, and look, we are potentially planning some sterile flies as well to be released. That's one of the tools we use, and if I go on to a few of the tools that we do use, we actually go through and we bait the over a 12-week period since the last detection. We bait what we call the red center, the 1.5K sort of area. We bait that twice a week for 12 weeks, and we also bait the suspension zone for once a week for the 12 weeks as well. So that's baiting. We'll do hygiene as well, especially in what we call the red center. So we'll go around and actually look for fruit on the ground, pick up fruit on the ground that might be suspectable hosts to make sure that's cleaned up. And we'll also do potentially tech checks as well. If we do see fruit on the ground, we might actually cut that up just to see if we can identify potential larvae that might just be hidden. And again, of course, the other tool that we've used for Mediterranean fruit fly in the past is sterile flies as well. So they're a really effective tool, especially on really low, when we get really low detection numbers, as a critical measure or method to actually eradicate fruit fly once and for all.
All right, let's see. Sharon's got a question there, so I'll just see if I can unmute her. Oops.
Hello, thank you for sharing all of this with us today. I guess I have two questions. One is, do citrus get fruit fly? And the second one is, are the baits pet friendly that you use?
Yeah, so basically the chemical that we use are safe when used according to label. So it is an organically registered chemical that we do use. So in the chemical world, we look at withholding periods, re-entry periods. There is nothing like that for the chemical that we use because it is naturally organically active ingredient in that chemical, so it's quite safe when use is directive. And look, if you've got a pet, we make sure we take that into consideration when our teams go out, and make sure the pet's away before we're spraying. Those sort of things. We don't try to spray near where pets are running around as well. We try to spray higher up in the tree or into the foliage where we can as well, so that pets don't have access. In regards to if you've got beehives on your property as well, we're really active in making sure if you've got beehives, we're made aware of that. And if you've got managed beehives on your property, we don't try to spray there as well. We try to utilise other tools more so than using some of our chemicals. And again, even when we are spraying chemicals and we don't know if there's a beehive there, we're actively not targeting flowering plants as well. But in regards to citrus, especially this time of the year, I know it's cold, but it is what we call a host fruit, so it is susceptible for fruit fly attack.
Thank you. As you're speaking, I, excuse me, do have one more question. Do they have a natural predator?
There's many natural predators for fruit flies, so dragonflies, spiders, lacewings, they all help control the fruit fly, but you know, we can't rely on those native predators in their own right because it's just not enough, and usually not in the same location as where the fruit flies are as well. So that's why we do utilise baiting, hygiene, picking up the fruit, cutting the fruit to check those sort of things as well, asking residents to manage their trees. So we use a whole range of tools, including SIT, our sterile insects, just to make sure we manage it as well. But of course, you know, there are definitely lots of beneficials out there that will help control fruit fly.
Thank you. So I think you've probably, I don't know, just seeing if anyone else has any other questions. You've probably covered a lot in, you know, a fairly short time. So looks like we've got one from Mary here. Right, let's see. Unmute your mic, Mary.
There we go. I think, Jason, with the a cold, dry winter, and they're predicting quite a wet spring and not raining probably until August, what will the effect of a...
So I got most of that, so I should be able to answer if I may. So look, cold, dry winter is really good for us. Look, you'll need -5 for quite a few hours to kill any potential larvae that might be in the ground. Fruit fly do have a habit, unfortunately, to what we call overwinter. So they may even overwinter in as flies in the trees, but larvae in the ground, in the soil, you need quite a few hours of -5 to actually cause those larvae to die. So, but what we do see is a bit of overwintering in as flies around areas, either your house, in your tree, because you know, even though it might be say -5. Within, under your eaves, in native plants, within foliage of trees, it can be quite warmer. So we don't have that killing effect because we've got pockets of warm air all around the place. So they can overwinter there as well. But definitely cold, dry is really good for us. Warm, wet springs are probably going to be a cause for an issue for us because if it's warm, you potentially speed up the life cycle of the pest as well. If we don't have any fruit flies out there at the moment because our controls have been 100% effective, it's not going to be an issue in the Salisbury situation. But look, warm weather will potentially shorten the lifespan. So when we talk about lifespan, so when we start talking about an outbreak situation, we think of how do we know when an outbreak finishes? So I've already mentioned that the 7th of December is our what we call our potential reinstatement date when we can lift our outbreak. That's based on the life cycle. So in winter time, it's really cold. So the way we determine when to lift an outbreak is we always look at either a 12-week period, or 1 generation plus 28 days, whatever's the longest. So when it's spring or summer and it's quite warm, that generation is really quick with 28 days. So then we would go to a 12-week period. When we're in winter and we find a fly, we'll go to a generation and 28 days because that period becomes the longest. So we're always looking at the longest period that we need to be using controls and making sure we're monitoring before we can actually reinstate the area after an outbreak. We just want to be really sure, and that's why in winter time sometimes we might have a detection in March, and suddenly the outbreak will be lifted in December. If we've got an outbreak or detection in, say, December, it's only going to be 12 weeks, right? So it's a lot less. I hope that explained it for you.
Was that cover what you were asking, Mary? That was sort of a question I had myself around the life cycle, but I suppose over the colder times then.
Yes.
Sorry,
my feed is dropping in and out every few seconds, so I'm as well. So it's a bit hard.
Yeah. For us, it's always the longest period because we need to be sure, and everybody around us, whether it's other states, the Commonwealth, they want to be sure as well that we're on top of this. So that's why we have set guidelines that guide us on when we can lift outbreak.
Yeah.
Not just what our government decides. It's a combination of all stakeholders.
So, like myself, like you've got the red zone, which would you say was it 1.5 km sort of?
Yes. So our outbreak areas are usually what we call 1.5 km. We have a real centralised one at 200 metres, but our outbreak area is generally 1.5 kilometres.
And how far out was your yellow zone? Because I'm just
up to 15.
Because I know that you sort of look at northern Adelaide and it covers a lot of the northern suburbs. So like that, unless you find something else that's not likely to move or so it's not just a strict distance. It's sort of.
Look, the only time the outbreak, the areas would be extended is if we had multiple flies or larvae found a reasonable distance away from our original outbreak area in Salisbury North. That's usually the only time. Up in the Riverland, we've had extensions, but it's usually extensions of our red centres, our 200 metres, because the detection or the larvae has been found pretty close next to it, so we extend it. If it's a fair way from that original outbreak area, then it actually can be classed as a new outbreak as well, which extends it quite wider. And that's what we had a few years ago when we had those metropolitan outbreaks of Mediterranean fruit fly. We had multiple outbreaks scattered around the area. And look, we have a 100% success rate in terms of eradicating fruit fly. Fruit fly is not endemic. It's not established here. That's why we have a very supportive government and previous supportive government in terms of making sure we can eradicate it, because we are looking about not just our horticultural industries, which is a $1.3 billion gross to our economy, but it's also the residents' social way of life as well. Because if we had established fruit fly, look, it'll be almost impossible to grow fruit in your backyard, tomatoes, those sort of things, because it can be a very devastating pest if left unchecked. That's why the government committed and supported to eradicating fruit fly.
No, it's good to hear. No, it's definitely, it's only relatively recent that, the outbreak a few years ago. Before that, there hadn't really been fruit fly around, so we've been quite fortunate.
Yeah, and we have been trying to be proactive in terms of engaging with growers, getting them to understand the market access requirements to move host vegetables and fruit in that area as well. So we've been trying to engage as much as we can with growers in the process of this current outbreak in Salisbury.
So on the you're saying within the yellow zone, or you can move you don't necessarily recommend it, but you can move fruit within, like, because I know we have, what we do with, we've had some trees up there, but sort of going, you're sort of suggesting that maybe we shouldn't be picking those and sharing that fruit sort of within that yellow zone.
Look, even though look, we can move fruit freely within the yellow zone. That's fine. We don't recommend it because it just causes concern that we could, if you had an underlying population or an issue, that we could be spreading the problem. And I can remember back when we had the Metropolitan Adelaide, I did do an interview with John Lamb as well, just to, just talk about fruit sharing. It's not in our DNA to not share, unfortunately. And we want to do that. And I've pleaded with our community in the Riverland as well, don't share the fruit, because I know we want to, but it can contribute to more problems down the track as well. But look, in the yellow zone, it's okay to share within the yellow zone. You can go into the red zone, that's fine, but you can't go from the red to the yellow, and you can't go from any zone into the green zone as well, because the risk is there. Whether it's low or high, it's a risk, and we just want to try to avoid it as much as possible.
Fair enough. Any other questions out there? Type them into the chat or raise your hand. Sounds like that. Sounds like that might be all the questions. The only last one, I had, what we can do in our own gardens. I suppose it is just, there's not really, like you said, there's not really any signs on the fruit. It's, I suppose, if it's fallen fruit or whatever, you can cut them open. Or
look, if there's fruit fall on the ground, it pays to have a good look at it before you dispose of it. If you don't have a green waste bin or a green bin, a green waste bin, you can put it in a plastic bag, seal it as well. That's a good way if you're not sure. But look, please, I encourage people, if you're unsure, pick up the fruit, cut it open, have a check. If you see anything which is suspicious, just report it to the fruit fly hotline.
Thank you. Thanks for your, bit of time in the evening.
My pleasure.
Hopefully, how's it going up the Riverland? Is it, is a lot more going up there?
Oh, absolutely. Look, we've got 51 outbreaks, so it's a lot more than what you have in Salisbury. And look, our messages have been the same to our residents, our community. I'm quite proactive in terms of talking to our local councils to get support. Our biggest challenge has been, in some cases, access to properties, just to try and make sure that we implement our controls as much as possible. Look, we've seen detection numbers drop over a period of time as well compared to last year, so we do see real positive signs of getting out of it, but it is time and a slow process, but we will get there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Time, and everyone else that tuned in. So much appreciated to get a few, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
No worries. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.